There we go. So welcome everybody to our chat with the SpaceLab and Emily Weber, the AWS Machine Learning Specialist. I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Operations, Polly Bell, to kind of walk through a little Hi, This Is Us with the SpaceLab. And take it away, Polly.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. So good morning, first and foremost. So Emily, we're excited to have you here. So we just have a quick presentation for you. So just let me share my screen with just one moment here. Hey, Matt, can you allow me to share my screen? Okay, so again, we're really excited to have you here. So we just wanted to kind of give you a quick presentation of what SpaceLab is. Again, it's very quick. However, I just want to give you an outline of a very brief introduction of SpaceLab. So without further ado, let's talk about SpaceLab. SpaceLab is a grassroots group of students, citizen scientists, industrial professionals in data science, web development, and software programming with a collective interest and passion for space science. What really started off as a one-time data science project exploring exoplanet had really grown into a prospective nonprofit organization dedicated to providing equitable opportunities for underrepresented communities and people in space and technology. So to help us stay true to our objective, we have our North Star laying out our guiding principle. Our mission is really to build the next generation of leaders in outer space, focusing on science and technology, drawing from diverse, underrepresented communities. We value the voice of those who often are talked over and underappreciated, because we really firmly believe that a diverse group of people approaching a problem will arrive at a more creative and unique solution. Our vision of success really includes a continuous stream of space-related projects that's built by inspiring tech professionals and invented by leaders of tomorrow. Therefore, I would like you to meet our team members that have been working hard at making this happen. So we have over a group of 25 people in our organization. Here are 8 wonderful people stepping up as leaders and mentors. We have inspiring software engineers and hardworking data team, as well as our creative bunch, UX designers, 3D graphic developers, and staff writers. So our current project right now is the exoplanetarium, which is focused on using data from previous NASA satellite mission in a convolutional neural network to search for additional planetary candidates that went unclassified by NASA. So currently at this moment, we are building our organization website and creating the exoplanetarium. So we can soon share this with the world and inspire other space enthusiasts from underrepresented communities to build and be part of this field. So that's really it. Thank you so much for listening, but enough about SpaceLab. So we would love to hear more about your journey into the world of machine learning, or if you have any question for us, the mic is yours.
Oh, sure. I'm definitely very curious about SpaceLab. I mean, first off, I'm very impressed at how mature your organization is. Like, those are a lot of different roles, different individuals, and is everyone really volunteering? Like, everyone's coming in from school. That's great. I'm really inspired. So that's such a nice model.
Yeah, everyone are volunteering, and basically because we all have sort of an interest in space and technology, and it just sort of, we all kind of found each other, or someone's found us, and we're just excited to be here and want to create something. So yeah.
How long have you all been together?
For me, I think I've been early summer, so probably early June for me. But I believe Matt and a couple of others have started this earlier on before this. It's kind of, Matt, I think do you want to talk about the history of how you guys thought about this?
Sure, yeah. So I did a data science boot camp during the pandemic, or the summer of 2020. And the capstone for my boot camp was an exoplanet discovery project. And I used data from the Kepler Space Telescope program that had only about 10,000 rows. And I made a classification model to classify the unclassified planetary observations that NASA and the Caltech grad and postdoc students had found. So they had essentially 10,000 observations, and of those they had classified around 6,000 of them. About 1/3 were exoplanets, about 2/3 were not. And that left around 4,000 unclassified exoplanets that I could have at, or maybe it was fewer. But the point is, I trained a few classification models on the known data, and then I put it against the unknown data, and then I kind of tweaked my PR curve and optimized for getting rid of false positives. And I said, okay, there's 39 definite exoplanets, and I named one after my partner. And I wanted to make that official. So I was able to contact some people at NASA who told me that as a non-PhD student or master's student, I'm not going to publish a paper, and so I can't officially name these. But there is a gentleman who has worked with citizen scientists in the past, and they put me in touch with Dr. Andrew Vanderberg. And Vanderberg and Chris Chalou, formerly or maybe currently at Google Brain. Vanderberg's a professor now at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he was working with me a little bit to try to start with these papers that other people had done using convolutional neural networks to discover exoplanets, as opposed to data other people already had, acquired. And, put me on this path and said, you might still be able to name your planet after, but, let's do this thing. And it's that was the beginning, really. And then a friend of mine had recently graduated from UCSC with a computer science degree. Another classmate of mine from undergrad is astrophysics buff, and she's she's a physics major and super interested in astrophysics. Did an official internship this last summer discovering exoplanets at UCSC with the LAMAT program. And so the three of us kind of started out with some ideas. We started reaching out to other people, and I thought it would be great to have a design team on board, which is when we reached out to Polly and her team. And then we knew we needed developers, and we found some other folks, including Brandon, who's now our project manager for the React.js front end. It kind of grew and grew and grew. And now we've got more than 24 people who are either still actively participating or have done their cohort and kind of moved along. We're filing paperwork to become an official 501c3 nonprofit. Ideally, we're all early career tech professionals or students who need fodder for our portfolios, who need to have experience on a cross-functional team working with people from different backgrounds and different, working styles that you just don't get in a collegiate atmosphere or even in a boot camp. That's one of the reasons I asked everybody to see yourself in this project and only do this if you can see value in it for yourself later. Because at the moment, we don't have any funding. None of us are be able to get paid. And pretty soon, my free $500 of AWS chips are going to be spent by
Right.
our ephemeral EC2s and our website.
Just move it into a new account. You'll be fine. Just create a new free account. No problem. It's
All right,
true
making
though.
a note.
Do it. I'm serious.
Well, maybe. Yeah. Depending on how long it takes for us to get some funding, we'll see. But thank you for the advice there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So anyway, that's us. I feel like I've already talked way too long, but that's kind of like the history on how we got to where we are.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting concept. I mean, I love that you started in a data science boot camp, and then just bringing in all of the rest of your background and the rest of your experience with this vision to get the whole team on board. It's really a great story. I mean, so I got started in data science. Oh my gosh. So before data science, I was in nonprofits actually. So I worked in Arizona at a local nonprofit. And eventually I had a friend who got invited to this data science for social good event. And I went along and I was just really inspired by the vision, by the scope of using, data and mathematics to help other people and make the world a better place. I thought that sounded perfect. I wish I'd had an organization as cool as you guys to kind of bring me along. I found my own project. So I think that was, when was this? Oh my gosh, 2014? It was 2014. So the financial crisis was still pretty raw. So I looked at the housing market. I downloaded a bunch of housing data and had no idea what a for loop was. So I just wrote a lot of code line by line to process it. But eventually I kept working on my project, and then I met a data scientist. His name is Raid Ghani, who was the director of the Data Science for Social Good program. And I remember I just kept bugging Raid. Like I showed up, multiple times in his office. I'm like trying to demo, my horrible Python code that I had been put out there. And one day he's like, hey, Emily, what are you doing this summer? I'm like, oh, I don't have plans. Like my other plans have just fallen through. And he's like, well, why don't you just come and be my intern? So that was how I got my first data science job, was just being an intern for Raid, kind of, with the same drive that you are all, demonstrating, and just having this real project that's relatable, that's interesting, that showcases your skills, and that really directly translates to a real project. So, oh, Matt, you are on mute.
Yeah, I like to be on mute, but I don't want to talk over anybody. That's so cool, though. Wow, so he's kind of made it happen. You didn't have a CS background or anything?
Not originally, no. So I ended up finishing out my undergrad, throwing in a bunch of math courses, and honestly doing CS classes on MIT OpenCourseWare, like just the free classes online. Yeah. So that was how I finished up my undergrad. But then once I did that internship with Raid, I eventually did go and get a master's degree. So I got a master's in Chicago in computer science and public policy, actually. So it was a joint degree. So like lots of applied economics, lots of statistics, lots of public policy analysis, and then a healthy smattering of all the Python you can stare at all day.
That's an interesting mingling. I've got so many questions for you, but Kat Rendon, our staff writer, has actually prepared a number of them, and I'd kind of like to turn it over to the two of you to kind of walk us through. I mean, I want to hear more about your journey, but I don't want to take up all the space. So.
All right.
Well, hi, Emily. I'm Kat. It's great to meet you. And already just hearing about your journey and what kind of brought you to data science is really inspiring. And I know that you had the Social Good Fellowship with data science. So what, like in conjunction with that, what is something that you find motivates you to do the work that you do? Like, what would you say is like maybe a driving value of yours?
Yeah, so there are a couple things for sure. After I bit the bullet and just embraced the data science and just embraced the Python, embraced the 2.5 years of pain that it is to get to acquire those skills. After that, I started just appreciating, honestly, the brain candy. I just found it so fun and interesting to like think about really hard problems, really complex problems, but also we can solve lots of problems in the world, right? There are so many different problems that we have to go after and different ways to solve them. What I like about computer science is that you build it and it stays there. Like I've spent a lot of time like writing plays, creating music, writing, really, really big ideas, but there's something that's so like stable and like long lasting about technology that I'm just very optimistic about technical solutions. Like I just love, thinking about a problem and just creatively coming up with computer science, data, deep learning approaches to that problem. Again, because it has this potential for really long-lasting impacts. And so just the pure sort of brain candy has been one of it. It's a big part of it. Another sort of long-term, so I've had ideas in the past about like data science projects for the public sector. So whether that's using like reinforcement learning to generate new public policies, or even like so something I don't talk about a lot is I actually have a Buddhist background. So before data science, I lived at a Buddhist retreat center for 5 years. In my early 20s. And so what I've always wanted to do is like figure out how to bring deep learning into Buddhism in a way, to like generate new questions and answers, or even like generate new, like sacred documents, I think would be really, really fun and interesting. So I guess like I, find value in like the short term interesting projects that I'm working on right now that matter a lot to my stakeholders. And then I also think about this like long-term, vision of like, here are the projects I want to work on someday, or here's this like larger, mission that I want to have. And so I'm kind of just balancing the two, honestly.
So I heard you say something about like the long-term mission you want to have. Is that again just like bringing your passion for like data science to more people? Is it like, what would you kind of, if you could give it like a tagline, what would you kind of say it is?
Oh my gosh. Man, I wish I had a tagline. I don't have a tagline. Um, in terms of bringing data science to other people, like I feel like when you come from a non-traditional background, and by that I mean like you didn't grow up and at age 6 realize you wanted to be in computer science and then study computer science in your undergrad, like anyone who's not in that bucket but still wants to be in technology, um, wants to be in machine learning, wants to be in data science, like I want those people to realize that they can do it. Like there's not, some bar against you permanently, just because you don't have a computer science undergrad. Like if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to, I hate to say it, but go the distance, like push through all of your adversity and like consciously learn, the skills that you need to and be really diligent about it. Like the world is your oyster. Like there are so many interesting projects out there, and the demand for people with our skill set is so aggressive, right? There's such a large demand for people who can do what we do, that there's nothing you can't do. There's limitless opportunity for things. And so I just love, having struggled the way I did, like I like helping other people struggle less, if that makes sense, and like have an easier path to success, because it's definitely worked out for me, and I just want to see it work out for other people too.
Yeah, I can definitely kind of relate with that. Like a lot of what I was in education for a little while. So a lot of what I wanted to do with that was bring like my experience to others. How do you think that your identity as a woman plays into your driving mission, or even how has that affected your experience in be like getting into computer science, especially not having that formal background? Has that affected
Yes.
it?
Yeah, no, in the early days it was really a big deal. I mean, I remember when I first got started, like when I was, year 1, year 2, like just trying to get Python installed on my laptop, especially, when you're like 25, 26, it's so tough because you like for many of my, male counterparts, like they just already knew somebody who already knew how to get them hooked up. Like their social network was just really, really rich. And mine was not. So, I would just like walk into a room like, great, here's a sea of like 200 undergrad boys. Like, what am I supposed to do with this situation? It was tough and confusing. Landing my first couple jobs was really tough. Just again, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't already have someone, who was kind of my ally. And over time, I found really good mentors, some of them female, some of them male, all of them, equally cared about me, equally, had the skills to offer to me. And a lot of that was just a perspective, just a viewpoint that I hadn't considered. But when I looked at the situation from that vantage point, things just made a lot more sense. And so yeah, I mean, I definitely try to, work with young women. I love being mentors. Love being a mentor both for people at work and people outside of work. Like I'm involved in, students from my university who are still, or my alma mater, I should say, who are, looking for jobs. So I still love, working with professionals who are just getting started. But I would say that's these days the emphasis for me is so much more like, where is our business and like where do we need to go, and everything else is just like a backdrop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And then I guess kind of going off that, because you're working with like early career professionals at your alma mater, do you think it's important for especially maybe like young girls to have important like strong role models in your kind of field? And I guess like how can we have more of those role models or make it more accessible for more women to be in your field?
Yes. No, it's definitely important. Like there's something really powerful about finding other people and just having this, inner voice in your mind that says like, "Oh, that's me," or I could be like that. And then just hearing the words those people say, hearing again, what their priorities are, what actions they took, what they, continue to bring to bear. It's so important. But I would say like, you know, they're there to be found. Like if, for anyone who's aspiring to find a mentor, at least for me, like literally anyone who pings me on LinkedIn, as Matt has found and wants to connect with me, I do. I'm very, very open to people who want, to chat or to catch up about things. I would expect other professionals to be the same. So like definitely, if you're looking for a mentor, like the only thing you have to do is just the homework, like just searching and pouring through lists of people. You have to watch talks, you have to, look for books, you have to look for events, you have to really like put yourself out there and try and find community. But once you find it, like it's great, everyone wants the help.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a big part of it is like, yeah, putting yourself out there, asking for the help when you need it and like seeking that out. Kind of a shifting kind of question. What would you say is maybe the highlight or something you're most proud of in your career?
Oh man, it varies every year. And this is something that we talk about at Amazon because Amazon moves like the Amazon River. Like we have a very, very, very fast pace. So at Amazon, really the nature of what you're doing, the nature of your biggest projects, the nature of your goals, that changes literally every single year. So every year you're kind of taking a new set of fresh eyes and you're thinking, okay, here's where we are. Here's where we actually need to be. Here's where customers want us to go. Here's where the industry is going. How do we bring those two together like right now? And that's something I've always loved about Amazon. We call it like that day one mentality where we're constantly thinking about, let's just throw all our previous assumptions out the window, like reassess, like what's actually happening now, and then do the best we can from that. And so within, when I look at each of those 3.5 years that I've been at Amazon, every one of those had really important career goals for me. Like I remember my first year at Amazon, 2018, 4 weeks after we had launched SageMaker, and no one came up to me and said like, "Oh, Emily, like I want you to talk about SageMaker." That didn't happen. What happened was that I showed up on this team of people who were doing machine learning, who were talking to customers. And what I did was I took ownership. Like I just figured out that I loved this SageMaker thing. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really unique. And no one else knew about it. Like, literally, the entire world did not know about SageMaker. And so I just had this personal mission of like, you know what, if SageMaker is going to be successful, then I'm going to be successful. And so I just talked to as many people about SageMaker as I possibly could, like internally, externally, obviously on the videos at summits, and then through that drive, like through that passion, like people started agreeing. They're like, yeah, this is awesome. Like we love this SageMaker thing. And then over time that evolved and that grew, and there were strategic moments where we could demonstrate like, yeah, this is really happening. And it's just been really exciting. But again, every year, I feel like I've had these really, really key milestones. And so for example, like this year, I feel like I just figured out how to run what I'm calling like virtual teams. So like when you're an individual contributor, and you don't necessarily like have people who are reporting to you, but you still have to take care of them. You know, you have to think about, are they supported? Do they have the right things? What are their goals? You know, how do I keep them up to date? How do I kind of create a community of people? And this year I feel like I've like really nailed it. So that's my highlight of this year, I have to say.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Like being able to create that like team culture can be really difficult. So I can see why that would be like it's a big win. So I heard you say like a lot of what your job is like really fast paced, it's constantly changing. How do you handle, I'm sure that must be stressful at times and a lot of pressure. So how do you handle all of that, especially if it's constantly just like go, go, go and changing? And
Yeah, so the good news is that it's not constant. Like no one could survive constant stress. So there are ebbs and flows. What I found in the first year is that like everything revolves around the calendar year, and people really vary. Both Amazonians and customers really vary in their appetite, they vary in their interest, they vary in their demands based on where we are in the year. So I've pretty much timed my whole schedule around reInvent. Like reInvent is when we launch all of our new stuff, and so I can pretty much estimate like to the month what level of effort I need to have, what activities I need to prioritize, you know, sort of where we need to be, based on again that time in the year. And so knowing that kind of strategic view of like, here's what to expect, you know, you're 12 months in advance, that's really helped me allocate my own projects, my own internal investment, my own you know, reporting and paperwork and all sorts of things. And that's like really lowered my stress level because I know it's expected of me, and I know how to nail it on my year-end goals, and I know how to delight my customers. I know, you know, sort of where to focus. But I also, you know, I still meditate. Like meditating is still really, really important to me. And so every day, you know, I try and take, honestly, on a good day, it's a couple hours of time to just, you know, recenter, refocus, and have, you know, a mind that's like not obsessed about my job, at least I try to, but, you know, is thinking about, you know, these broader ideals. And so I find that like very rejuvenating, definitely. And then that also helps me relax at work and not stress about the little things and just focus on what matters.
yeah, so it sounds like kind of knowing when to take a break, like compartmentalizing a little and just giving yourself that like space away from everything kind of plays into that as well.
Yeah. And, you know, this is also tough for high achievers. Like if you're someone who just naturally works hard, like you can feel odd if you don't have something to work hard about. You know, like you don't feel like yourself unless you have like a high, you know, priority project and a deadline. And so I realized in my first couple of years that I was doing that to myself. You know, that like I would just stress myself out for like literally no reason about things. And it took me years, you know, to realize that like that's maybe not that important. And I can just let that slide, and I can worry about the things my stakeholders care about, worry about things my organization cares about, and really just learn how to incorporate my own priority structure based on, you know, my stakeholders and my organization's priority structure. And then that's just helped me relax so much because, you know, hey man, like give me your priority one and I'll do it. But if it's not that, if you don't care about it, then I don't care about it. And that's also given me a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I really want to try to work on in my own personal life.
Yeah.
It's because it can be hard to do, just being like, okay, just take a step back and all that. So I
Yes.
do want to give Matt a chance to ask his questions, but I guess one last question I'd have for you is, like Matt was mentioning, a lot of us are kind of early career professionals. We're kind of like getting our footing in whatever industry we're in. And so what, I guess, you know, advice would you give to people just when, no matter what the industry, like what is an important piece of advice that we should all like hold at the forefront as we're all going forward?
Yes. So when you're looking for jobs, when you're looking for funding, when you're looking for someone to really buy into you and to believe into you, there are two dimensions that you want to prove yourself on and that you absolutely want to nail. One of those is skill. One of those is definitely technical skill. And so to demonstrate technical skill, you want to have projects to show. And so you want a variety of projects, but you also want depth. So you want to be able to go down the rabbit hole. You want to talk about like, no, this is exactly why we designed this project. Here's why we didn't do it this way. Here's how far we got. Here's the reason why we got that far. And here's like a picture of what it looks like, right? So you can describe the Python code, or you can, identify that specific data set. You can throw in the name of the method that you're using, but there's this technical depth and the breadth, so to speak, like the variety of technology. And you certainly do not have to like boil the ocean, right? You don't need to know everything about everything. You want a good mix of both. Like you want some breadth in terms of the variety of technologies you've worked with, the Python packages, the methods, the techniques. And, when you're getting started, tracking those is half the battle because you barely learn the name of it. And then you're running through a notebook demo. But you want to get in the habit of copy pasting those onto your resume. Like you want your resume to basically sparkle with all of the terminology, all of the, the technology terms. But then also when you're answering questions about it, you want to get used to showing where you are deep. So if someone asks you a question about something that you don't know, you don't typically want to say, oh, I don't know that. End of story. Like what you want to do is demonstrate what you do know. So if someone says like, oh, can you tell me about support vector machines? Maybe you say, I've heard that they were popular a few years ago. And actually recently, maybe people are looking at them for neural networks. But actually the algorithm that I prefer to use is XGBoost. And man, let me tell you about XGBoost. And then you go, really, really deep in that area. And so then when you're, working with with the hiring team who's evaluating you, you're demonstrating again depth. And then you're also earning trust with them because you're saying, hey, you can give me something. And even if I can't do 100% there, I can do 70% over here and I can tie those two together. And so that's super valuable. So just that technical depth. The other axis that you want to nail is willingness to do your job. So enthusiasm. Like every single company, every team, every role wants people who are enthusiastic about their mission. They want people who are enthusiastic about what they do, who seem like they have energy, who seem like they care, who do have energy, who do, want to work with them. And so as you're interviewing with companies and as you're learning about what the companies actually do, like spend some time thinking about their mission, spend some time thinking about what they focus on, what their areas are, and try to find something that you want to do. Like try and find people you want to work with, projects you think are interesting, segments that you want to focus on, and again, like be enthusiastic about those. And man, like when you're looking at candidates, and if you find someone who's like both really skillful, like really technically skillful, and also cares about your mission, and also seems like they'll have energy to bring to the group, like no one's going to say no to that person. That person's an immediate hire.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Emily. I want to hand it over to Matt. I don't want to take up all the time, but thanks so much. And it's just been really great to speak with you and hear all your advice and just all the wonderful things you've had to say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. Yeah, I think that Alex had a couple questions for you as well. He's our other staff writer at the moment. And then let's just go around the horn. Everybody can come off mic and introduce yourself really quick. We've only got a little bit of time left, but if we have a couple questions, that might be great. And then obviously, Emily may have more questions for us. So if that's okay with you, Emily, let's pass it over
Let's do
to
it.
Alex.
Let's do it.
Hi, Emily. My name's Alex. Yeah, I'm another staff writer here, and I actually work for Whole Foods. So I guess that makes you and I like ninth coworkers, twice removed on
It
our
does.
boss's side or something like that. I just have one question for you, actually. So you've had a lot of really good recommendations and wisdom, particularly for people who are trying to come into the industry from like a non-technical background. And so that's great. Everyone who's coming into this, we've all experienced tons of professional events and recommendations for how to get into the industry now, because a lot of people are moving into technology these days. But I think it's also important to consider people who are maybe already established in the industry and how they can help newcomers out and facilitate that sort of transaction to everyone's benefit. So what I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier how as an outsider, like you're in a room with 200 undergraduate men. So whether it's an outsider as a woman in a field that's still mostly men, or just someone coming into the field who doesn't have a technological background, is there any advice or words of wisdom that you would want to share with people who are already established? And where I'm coming from with that is I talk to a lot of people who work in tech who studied computer science or what have you. And so there's a lot of discussion. Like I'm in Austin, Texas, which is a huge tech hub, I'm sure you know. And I talk to a lot of people here who their companies, they talk to me about how everyone is hiring people from boot camps. Like that's the new hot thing. More people are going to boot camps than getting a master's degree because it's cheaper and you learn most of the same stuff. And a lot of them are trying to figure out how to incorporate some of them who come from a slightly different background than someone with a more formal education. Were there any practices that worked for you from some of your coworkers or other people who were really good at helping you get into the industry? Or similarly, were there things that people didn't do and initiatives that they didn't take and support you didn't receive that you would have liked to, that you think someone working in a company would want to hear?
Yeah. So, I really think that the individual who wants to join the group, you get to run the show for yourself. Like the way I think about it is like the way I was telling my intern this summer, you are the CEO of Alex. I am the CEO of Emily. Matt is the CEO of Matt. Kat is the CEO of Kat. And so you get to set the boundaries for yourself. You get to set the nature of your relationships with other people. You get to set the projects that you work on. You get to set your relationship with people who are looking at bringing you in. It's really the place is yours. You get to determine how you interact. And the reason I say that is because particularly when you're coming in, there are a couple things you want to keep in mind. One is don't forget your inherent value. Like, as a human being, as someone with a brain, as someone who is there, a breathing, thinking, biological human who cares about this project and is offering to help. Like that offer to help, that curiosity, that attention always has intrinsic value anywhere and everywhere. And so you never want to forget that that has value. The second thing that you want to get comfortable feeling is not knowing something. You want to get very comfortable with not knowing something. And now over time, we're going to want to move the things that we don't know into the things that we do know, right? So like mentally, you want to track like, bam, okay, here's a list of all the things that I don't know. And here are some of the things that I do know. And like right now, that list of things that I do know is a lot smaller than the list of things that I don't know. But over time, where you're interested, where it aligns on your projects, where something seems like a natural fit, you can move those things in, like slowly and carefully, you can grow that portfolio of things that you do know really, really well. And so when you're comfortable starting from zero at a project, comfortable knowing that you don't know something, but you remember your intrinsic value, and you remember your ability to, contribute to a group, then eventually that turns into you knowing something and actually having a lot of value in that project. And so I would just say like patience, like we need to give ourselves patience. We need to give, our teams patience. And then eventually it sort of naturally works out. But as long as we're not, too hard on ourselves and too critical, because like when we get too critical, like for example, I'm trying to learn Tibetan right now because it's fun to do new things. So I'm learning the Tibetan language. And it's really easy to beat myself up about all the things that I don't know and all the ways, that my Tibetan language is inadequate. But when I sort of just relax about that and stop, criticizing myself, but just continue, the humble process of learning, and trying to learn something well, that contributes to me actually completing my lessons and my learning goals. So.
All right. Thanks, Emily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I really like the idea of looking at our knowledge kind of like a Kanban board, where we have a backlog of the things we don't know and goals of things that we do know, and we kind of move them along the board from working in progress. I love that. That's awesome.
I wasn't thinking Kanban, but you're right. that's a good way to visualize it.
I guess I'm a nerd, but yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. You're right.
Yeah, and really being open-minded. That's cool. I only have one question, and it's very quick, and then I want to pass it over to Brandon and popcorn it over to Nemi and then over to Gio. Do you know Katie Malone? You guys are both in Chicago and machine learning, public policy.
Her name is really familiar.
She used to have a podcast with a guy who worked at Facebook, and the two of them did a machine learning podcast called Linear Digressions.
I've definitely heard the name. Yeah.
Super fun podcast. When I was in community college for computer science, that was my like go-to when I'd walk to class. It was like a 15-minute podcast.
That's
Anybody
great.
wants to, yeah, really high-level machine learning stuff. But anyway,
Very
she used to work at
nice.
Civis. She's in public policy too, and so that's what I
For
was asking.
sure. Oh yeah, I'm sure we know the same people. Like I know a ton of people who are at or used to work at Civis or want to work at Civis.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, that was a digression too, but thank you. Okay, I'll popcorn it over to Brandon to say hi, and then we'll go to Nemi and then over to Gio.
Thanks. Hi, Emily. I'm Brandon. I'm the front end team lead here, and this was great. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk to us. There's a lot of great information. I know a lot of us come from boot camp backgrounds and things like that, and I don't want to take too much time, but I did have one maybe short question for you. You had mentioned that you did a lot as far as teaching yourself Python, and then jumped into an internship, and that progression led you to a master's. So your experience with the master's in CS, or at least that part of it, did you find that you felt like you were very much behind coming in without the undergrad in CS, or was the work that you did to familiarize yourself with Python and kind of get some experience prior to that, was that, I guess, what advice would you give for someone like myself, say, who went through a boot camp, is now working in the industry full-time as a dev, but is looking at getting that official education, getting a master's or something? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, if you already have a job, then the question is on the master's is why? Like, why would you do it? It's expensive, it's time consuming, it can be painful. Why would you do it? And so for me, I was just obsessed with data science. I just like wanted to know how the algorithms worked. I wanted to be involved in the science. I wanted to like help develop new algorithms. And so for me, the master's degree, and even though I made a million mistakes, I probably should have applied to more schools. I should have taken different classes, whatever. What my master's degree did was it helped me analyze problems at a really deep and a really rigorous level. And without that, I don't think I'd be able to engage in the scientific field the way that I do and the way that I love to do. And so if that's not a priority to you, then maybe you don't need the master's degree. Like maybe you can get along just fine without it. There are some topics from, say, like theoretical computer science that, depending on how far you want to go in technology and depending on what your goals are, it's really helpful to have. Like, it's really helpful to be familiar with some search algorithms. It's helpful to be able to think about runtime. It's helpful to be able to think about throughput and database design and data structures. It's helpful to like visualize a problem and size up like, oh yeah, this is probably a bottleneck, or like, oh, your problem is maybe coming over here. And so those skills are super valuable. Now, like how you acquire those or what you do, to get them, that doesn't matter. But having those skills is super valuable. And now, like, so your first question of, did I feel inadequate? Like, hell yes. Like, it was incredibly painful, like I showed up without even a real economics background, and like suddenly I was trying to survive U Chicago economics, stats, and computer science. And it was really painful. What I loved about computer science, what I still love about computer science, is that like at the end of the day, your script either doesn't work or it works. If it doesn't work for a specific reason. And if you root cause it, you can in fact solve that reason. And you can do that all on your own. And so I just always found that like physical aspects of computer science to be so relaxing and or like liberating or fulfilling, or however you want to describe it. Like, I just loved being able to write, really cool scripts that did really cool stuff. And like, that was what I ended up being the most proud of. And so that was why, I really thought that I would make the most sense in technology, was just because I loved, writing code that did stuff. And I felt like that was a good way to solidify my learning. And so I just gravitated more towards those areas.
Awesome. Thank
Awesome.
you.
That was
Yeah.
Thank you for a great question, Brandon, and thank you, Emily. Nemi, you popcorn it over to you.
Sure. I'm new here as well, so I just wanted to discuss with you, as in like I'm new into the field. So how would you use your I know you have a passion for the field, but how do you keep that passion in your keep learning? Because there are certain points when I'm learning that I just lose my interest, and then I just step away from it, and then it
for sure.
snowballs into that.
Yeah, totally. So the first one is having like a long-term drive. And a long-term drive, it sounds silly, but it's like a dream. It's like some vision in your mind that you have of like a really cool project you want to work on, or some area that you'd like to be. And that can be 20 years from now, that can be 15, that can be 5 years from now. And it doesn't even have to be like concrete, you don't even have to be able to write it on paper. It's just like a feeling that you have. And so first you want to find that feeling. Like, you want to find something that just like you just are naturally interested in. Like, your biology just says like, ooh, I like this when someone starts talking about it, like you just react to it well. So you find that like long-term focus area. And then once you have that long-term focus area, and like for me, that started as just data science. Like, I just wanted to live and breathe everything data science. But even before then, I was pretty confused because I actually thought that web development and data science were the same thing for like 6 months. So like I signed up for a boot camp as well, in addition to doing this data science internship. And then I finally realized that there were different things. And I was like, oh man, this is too much. Like, I'm just going to focus on data science for now. So I dropped web development. I still suck at it, but I do data science. But so like, so over time, like, you want to start to get a better sense of like your place, or like the things that you like focusing on, your niche area. And then once you have like your niche area, then you just look at that, and you look at topics within that, and you stay up to date on those topics. But like, if you try and do everything in the Kanban board, like if you try and do every single thing that you don't know, that's just exhausting. And it's not going to help you feel productive. But, if you trim that down to the, maybe 2, 3, 4 areas that you just think are cool and that just excite you intellectually, then, it's easier to just focus on those and to really be productive in there. And so that's also really valuable to your, prospective employers and your teams, because then they know exactly where to put you. They're like, oh, database guy, done, or, oh, front end guy, easy.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Nemi. And we'll popcorn it over to Gio to close us out.
Hi, Emily. So I'm Gio. I'm a new data science intern. Sorry for the city noise. So the reason I'm getting my master's is, long story short, I'm an international student, and I'm mostly interested in it for like the connections. But most of my background right now is in academic research and in academia. So I sort of want to ask this question in a new way. Like, what are the problems you find most people with an academic background going into like corporate work seem to make? Like, what are some of the pitfalls that you see people fall into?
Yeah. So I would say probably the first one is not knowing your value, actually. Because I feel like in academia, we can tear ourselves apart for like not getting something perfect or not knowing everything. And then even when we do, from an academic perspective, like that's just a lead into your next project. That's a lead into another research area. And so sometimes there can be this sense of like a lack of self-worth in a sense. And I feel like I don't see that as much in, sort of more industry settings, because in industry, like you do something, you deliver on a goal, we celebrate, like everyone is really happy when that is accomplished. Now that's not always the case. I don't want to, make any broad trends there, but when you are, leaving an academic setting, if the academic research that you did had coding in there somewhere, if it was computer science, if you were writing Python code for some project, that is super valuable to every data team on the planet. Like everyone wants someone with a research background. So when you know that about yourself, but are also, say, humble, also, care about their mission and care about, what they're trying to do and want to help them achieve their goals, then that makes that transition easier. Where, you don't immediately shoot yourself in the foot just because you don't have 5 years of experience, you only have 3, like that's fine. Like no one's gonna freak out about that. So that you're valuable, but at the same time, you're also humble about learning new things and learning about their projects. That combination is very healthy and is very attractive because it's easy to work with. And it's good to have people like that on our teams.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Gio. Yeah, great questions for everybody. Thank you so much. And Emily, oh my gosh, I can't express enough how thankful I am to have you with us. I'm actually going to hand it off to Polly to close this out in a moment. I know that I've got 1,000 deep questions, like where can I find resources on reinforcement learning in SageMaker with RLS, for example. But I think that those are probably better left for a different forum. But I thank you so much. I appreciate you, and hopefully we can reach out to you in the future when we do new cohorts to maybe talk more about different things in the SpaceLab world. Polly, if you'd close us out. I don't know if you have any other questions for Emily as well, but I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Well, Emily, you have such great knowledge for us, and I'm sure we'll be going over the recordings to try to write everything down. But do you have any final thoughts for us, or any final wisdom that you want to share with us to help us stay motivated and continue this process of building fun things, especially in the space technology space, and inspiring others that's from underrepresented communities to join this space?
Yeah, I would say, like if I were picking priorities, I would pick priorities that were aligned with developing new technology. Like because you're in a very niche space, right? Like you can work on the coolest project you can possibly think of. So what I would try and do is pick like projects no one is doing, pick research no one is doing, pick data sets no one is doing, put data sets together in totally new ways, throw new algorithms at them. In enterprises, people can stagnate, where we kind of get stuck in ruts just doing the same thing over and over again. And so in a kind of fresh organization like you're in right now, where you have the ability to really push the limit on current technology, I would say develop the absolute coolest, the absolute most interesting, most novel technology you can think of, because now is the time to do it. Like now is absolutely the time to like throw out ridiculous, crazy ideas. Like I want to see like 5 crazy ideas from you guys, like where you're, really ambitious about projects you want to work on, data sets you want to work on, technology that you want to develop. And then the sheer ambition of that, the vision, the scope of like really thinking big, that in itself is a motivator. Like everyone gets behind that. Like that's what we all want to see. And so that's what I would love to see from SpaceLab for sure.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the challenge, and I feel like the gauntlet's been laid, everybody. We've got some work to do. We need some more, I'm gonna just say Mars shots, Jupiter shots, I don't know. Alpha Centauri. Brandon, what's the nearest celestial body we can do? Because the moonshot's too close.
Centauri.
Centauri, there we go. Awesome. Emily Weber, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and visiting us today and answering our questions. We really appreciate you, and I look forward to being able to show you something in the near future coming out of SpaceLab with our applications and our future projects. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Matt, team, thank you so much for having me. It was really, really a pleasure to chat with you all today.
All right.
So,
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Emily.
All righty.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.